there was no denying the fact that the visible destruction of the bay had been maybe an unconscious concern, so that when the Army Corps map appeared in the Oakland Tribune showing that the bay would end up being the river by 2020 because of all the fill, it was clear to me that this was certainly a possible train of events, and it needed to be stopped.
And I was totally appalled reading in the Gazette of the city manager's dream to fill over 2,000 acres in front of Berkeley. And this was one of the things that galvanized us into action.
We had, most of the leaders are very influential in their own organization.
I mean, all of the conservationists that we could think of, because the three of us had decided that we were not conservationists, and this was a really terrible problem, and we were going to tell them about the problem, and then they were going to carry the ball.
We weren't going to form an organization at all.
And we didn't have any of the expertise, and we explained about the Army Corps map, and everything that we could find out was that there were maybe 80 square miles of fill already proposed by various cities around the bay. And so we said, this is a problem. And so I remember Dave Brower saying, well, it's just exceedingly important, but the Sierra Club is interested in wilderness and in trails. And then the next guy, Newton Drury, said, well, this is very important, but we're saving the redwoods and we can't save the bay. And then it went around the room to the point where there was dead silence. And so we said, well, the bay's going to go down the drain. And Dave Brower said, no, there's only one thing to do, start a new organization, and we'll give you all our mailing lists.
And they all wished us a great deal of luck when they went out the door.
Yeah, well, they bother us again.
They said someone should really do something about this. Somebody, and it turned out that we were the somebodies. Berkeley had gotten, their plan was at the stage of the planning commission. They were holding hearings, almost the last stage before it got to the city council itself.
I think that's what made the people of Berkeley, when we once got organized and sent letters to about 1,000 people in Berkeley to ask them if they were interested in joining Save the Bay, and told them some of the things that were going to happen if this went through, like Berkeley being almost twice the size as it now is, the other half out in the bay, and that there were things like maybe an airport going to be out there. There were going to be storage buildings and that kind of thing. They just couldn't believe it. You know, they, like us, thought the bay belonged to us. The bay belonged to everybody.
And here was the hand we were dealt in 1965, a temporary commission, which means if you don't score a touchdown, the ball game's over, right? You don't go on forever, so you don't have the luxury of permanence. The goal was, let's do something that will be the basis for successful legislation in 1969 that will both protect the bay and encourage the kind of shoreline development you want to have. If you've shown over the 4 years that people were fairly treated and that rational, necessary development was encouraged, not discouraged, and that valuable bay filling parts of the bay were protected or whatever, you make a case for continuing. And finally, because the people that oppose you are going to be very strong, very well financed and all, you have to maintain the public support that got the whole thing started. If you lose that, you've got nothing. You got a plan and nobody who cares.
You know, one of them was that you don't put something in the bay that can just as well go on land. The next one was you don't put something next to the bay that can just as well go inland. And that covered an awful lot of things. A house doesn't have to be in the bay. A yacht harbor does. Yeah. You know, so, okay, so if there's a choice, okay, the things that are water related get a priority over these others. Things that the general public can enjoy will get preference over things that just a limited group can enjoy, and the things that a limited group of people can enjoy will get a preference over something that only a single person or a single owner. There are a lot of industries that need to be in the bay, but if you fill it up with houses and warehouses, you don't leave room for those things that really have to be there.
But see, it worked both ways, because the more development-minded people had to take a look at marshlands, but similarly, the dyed absolute, if that's the right term, conservationists had to understand there was an economy in the Bay Area, and that shipping, after all, did depend on ports, and ports did depend on dredging and deep water access, and people sort of had to confront the legitimate interests of both conservation and development. And the idea, again, that Mel felt very strongly about, is that reasonable, fair-minded people confronted with facts in a reasonably unemotional way are going to come out largely agreeing to the same kinds of things. They may disagree on a particular permit or a particular issue, but no fair-minded person can say marshlands aren't important. And similarly, no fair-minded person can say ports aren't important to the Bay Area economy.
I have a theory that I inherited from Dave Brower, actually, and that is that environmentalists should be extremists. They represent an extreme, and the people who are going to make a buck represent the other one, and the decision makers should sweat it out in the middle. I think looking at the resource and what we thought it should be 100 years from now took priority over what somebody could do to make a short-term profit. One of the big theories I came out of it with, and it's called salami logic, and very true, though, in my opinion, that if you look at a slice, you see something very different than if you look at the whole loaf. And if somebody owns a piece of shoreline and some mud flats, and they go to the city council and they say, no, I just want to fill in a little bit of that out here to help my building, but I'm going to put a little path around here, and there's a picnic table, and I've got this architect that's going to put ivy on my building, and I'm going to create 50 jobs, and I'm going to pay you $20,000 a year in taxes, and on and on. And I've only taken 0.0007% of the bay. The city council can't turn that down. But if you looked at all of the privately owned shallow parts of San Francisco Bay and said, now, if this happens to even a large part of it, was that a good idea? We'd say no. If you looked at that one slice, you'd say yes. So as planners, we should be looking at the total, but a developer looks at only his thing.